Well, hello, my friends. Welcome to the show. I'm excited to bring to you a fantastic guest who I just teased is way busier than I am these days, and I'm super, super impressed. Her name is Lynne Golodner, and she has got a brand new book out, and we're going to be talking about that and a bunch of things. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's my pleasure to be here.
I'm really excited to have you because first of all, obviously, I love talking to fellow authors and hearing all of the things that you're doing and hearing about your writing journey and the how and why of everything. And as it shows on the bottom here, you've got a lot more stuff going on. You're a writing coach. You're a host of your own talk show, podcast, the whole works. So let's kind of go down the line. Let's kind of go way back a little bit and talk to me about how you became a writer and what inspired you.
You know, it's funny. So as this book just came out, which was my 9th book, my first novel, and my mom has been saying, oh, she was 6 years old when she started writing. And I'm like, oh, so there's a definite time, I've always been a big reader, love storytelling. And I remember lots of times when I was a kid that I would tote a little, journal with me and write down little poems, stories, skits, things like that. Writing is really how I make sense of the world. And so I have lots of times in my youth where writing was my outlet. It was my exploration, my creativity, my way to sort of figure out what I thought about things too and what I believed. But my mom says it started at age 6, so we're going to go with that.
I love that. Yeah. And that's a thing. And obviously you're an avid reader too, right? Devoured like everything you get your hands on. And
Yeah.
I remember being yelled at as a kid to stop reading. Like I was, every family get together, like I was had my nose buried in a book and all of those things, literally pretty much too, because I couldn't see and we didn't know that yet, that I was, pretty close to blind. So I was like right up there.
Wow. Yeah.
Oh, so now you just released, it was September 26th, right? The
Yeah.
release date for your new book. It's
Yeah.
called Women of Valor. And let's see, and I think we have a picture of it here. It's probably going to go like right on top of us, but I'm doing it anyway. Yes,
Yep.
there it is. I know we have to like scooch to the side here.
Oh,
I know, right?
really?
And there it is, Women of Valor. Tell me a little bit about how that book came about.
Yeah, so Woman of Valor, I actually started writing it under a different title in 2011 and wrote about 60 pages and sort of stalled. And, I was also, my kids were little. I have a marketing business and that was really busy. And so I just put it aside. And I've always wanted to write fiction. I actually wrote another novel in the early 2000s and probably it will never see the light of day. But I think my writing skills needed to mature in order for me to write a book that I felt was worthy of publication. And so I came back to these 60 pages in 2021. And I just thought, there's something here with the bones of it, the core of the story. But I needed a totally different angle. Like I just completely, took it apart, put it back together and said, I'm going to turn this into a novel and I want it out in the world. And so I was very deliberate about the story. When I first started writing it all those years ago, it was kind of a whiny story about a young woman who had chosen to be religious in Judaism, became an Orthodox Jew, and she was, sort of lamenting her life. And I thought, this is boring. There are plenty of books out there where people don't like a religious lifestyle and want to leave it. I don't need to add to that. And so even though I had spent 10 years in the Orthodox community myself, and I no longer am, I wanted to show a positive identity and a positive experience with challenges that are realistic, but where she wants to preserve her choice. And what can she do when that happens? So I was really deliberate in revising and building characters that were compelling and, really felt like they came to life. And so 2021 is when I really, hit the ground running. It was ready in 2022 and came out in 2023. So I was like, boom, boom, boom. And now that I have this, I'm going to write a book a year for the rest of my life. And so the next book is in revisions now. And, we'll see if I can keep up that pace.
Isn't it funny how that works? It's literally addictive, and I've equated it once before to now. So I this is a weird comparison. Bear with me, but I have no tattoos, and I know people who are tattooed, and they all say the same thing that once you get one, it's like an addiction, and you need more. So to me, book writing is that version of that like once you write one you can't stop. And I know that from personal experience, and obviously you know it too. When I wrote the first one, I said, okay, good, I'm good. I got it out of my system. I purged this need, this desire to write and publish a book. And I thought I was done. And I kid you not, and I'm sure you relate to this, within, maybe days or even a week or so, I was like, no, 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 there's more. There's more. I've got to write more.
Yeah.
Can't stop, right?
Well, it's funny, like I said earlier, I mean, I make sense of my world through writing. So when I have, I write a lot of creative nonfiction essays, and those begin with a question, like, what do I think about this? Or
Mm.
what's going on here? And so I just start to write, oftentimes it has to do with my relationships or my kids or whatever. And I'm like, what do I really think? And so my early drafts are super messy because I just don't know where it's going. But I don't know what I think or believe until I've spent some time writing about it, exploring it, seeing where it takes me. And it's funny, I recently had hand surgery, just a little minor thing, but for a writer to have your right hand when you're writing, out of commission for a few weeks, and I realized like people were saying, well, can't you use like the dictation mode to write? And I'm like, yeah, no, I think through my fingers on the keyboard. I think that's how I come to my ideas. And I'm like, I just have to take a few weeks off until I can type again.
You are my kindred spirit. I totally relate to that. And you're the first person, honestly, that I've met um, that has said the same thing. Because I've always said that I tried it. I tried
Yeah,
it, and my brain doesn't work that way. It just
right, right.
refuses.
Yep,
Right. And
kindred
so
spirits.
does that mean like so have you heard the phrases plotter and pantser,
Yes.
right? So that kind of makes you somewhat of a pantser, right? You just sit down and you're able to start writing pretty much.
Well, yes, but I taught myself after writing Woman of Valor to be a plotter because
Mm.
the problem was with Woman of Valor is that I was going through it blindly, which is what you do when you pants, which is my instinct. And
Mhm.
I was like, well, what happened earlier with this character? Or, oh, remind me about this relationship. And so I ended up with like a document open beside the manuscript that was like
Mm.
a very like crude outline of like here are the characters and here are the connections and here's who they are and their hair color and whatever. And so when I started to write this next novel, I spent a whole month planning it out and doing character development. And I have these like huge staple documents now that are like all around me when I am writing because it keeps me on track. And I still
Yeah,
improvise, but at least I have a structure to work with. And
right.
I think it I think I wrote it more quickly and more confidently because of it. So it's a learned skill for sure.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I agree. I had to go back and do it too on a series I wrote, and I really, really regretted the way that I had done it because it was basically like reread everything to get all the minutia, really, like the details, the color of the eyes, because in book one it can't be different than book, four or whatever,
Yes.
or even in the same book. But you also help other writers. You're a writing coach.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about that.
So I did my MFA in creative writing in the 90s. And so that enabled me to teach at the college level, in all kinds of places. So I have been teaching since then, mostly at universities, but also adult classes. And when I decided I wanted to get serious about my own writing, I really deliberately shrank the marketing business and pivoted to teaching more so I could just be surrounded by writing all the time.
Mhm.
So, I kept a couple bread and butter clients just for, revenue. But I said, well, if I'm going to work and I need to bring in the income, let me work with writers so that I'm completely immersed in that world. And I recalibrated my whole schedule so that my days begin with writing and then I work with clients in the afternoon. And so I've developed this whole business. Like I teach courses through writingworkshops.com and my own writing courses as well. And I've created programs called the Writers Community and the Accountability Cohort that are ongoing and really put people in an intimate community so that they can get their writing done and get some solid feedback in a safe environment and a supportive community. And then I do work one-on-one with writers as well. And most of the time, it's coaching them on improving their writing or planning out a book or building a practice. I do occasionally take on editing clients, people who I've worked with a lot who say, "Hey, I've written a draft of a book. Can I hire you to do a developmental edit?" And I love working with them, but I actually don't love that work very much because it's a ton of reading and I give such detailed feedback that it just takes up my time. And so I'm rethinking that, to be honest, because I think, there are people who do it and I've used developmental editors before and they're fantastic. But I think when you specialize in what you're doing, you do it better as opposed to going
Sure.
wide and shallow.
Yeah, absolutely. And what, all of the things you provide to aspiring writers and new writers is so beneficial because I remember being out there and, and I'm a pantser in every phase of my life. And when I decided that I was going to write a book, I just dove right in and then made lots of mistakes and everything. And had I reached out to some type of mentor, I would have made life a lot easier for myself. So, to be able to find people like you that can help people guide them on that whole journey and that whole process. Because I think so many people start and they're so lost and they get discouraged and they put away something that they dreamed about doing and that, matters to them. And
Yeah,
it's sitting in a drawer somewhere or on a file in their laptop somewhere and just collecting, dust or proverbial dust. And they don't do it because they don't know how or where to get help. So I think it's awesome that you do that for people. It's so great.
thank you. Yeah, I love working with writers, and I'll tell you a story. A friend of mine said once, she's like, "Is there ever a point where you would say to someone, just stop writing because it's not
Mm.
good?" And I was like horrified by the question because I thought, if first of all, if you want to write, you should write, and we can
Yes.
always improve our skills. So even if you don't start out really knowing a lot of the nuances and techniques, you can learn that. And
Right.
not everybody is going to be a fabulous writer, but they can be proficient. And if they feel that
Mhm.
calling to get a story on the page, absolutely they should heed it. So I can't imagine ever telling someone that they should just, hang up their writing chops and they're done.
Right.
And I think it's really what I've learned is, especially because a lot of women at midlife are coming to me in these classes and for coaching. And what I'm finding is that more than anything, it's about building confidence and self
Mhm.
esteem because so many of us have been told, well, that's a nice little hobby, but you can't really make anything from it and focus on something more important. And so, you have that burning desire and then at midlife you're like, okay, enough. Like I
Mm.
deserve to really do what I'm called to do, but I'm nervous because all these voices have been telling me for so many decades it's not worth my time. So much of it is building up belief in self and that their voice matters and that they should spend time on this.
And what better person to do that and foster that confidence and do it than you really, because your story is pretty great too. You are truly a self-made woman. And just listening to you, I'm thinking to myself, that woman is never bored. Like she is never bored for a single minute in her life. And I love that. It's so relatable that, there's so many things that you can do and be passionate about, and I think you're so right on the money with that women in, I call myself a woman of a certain age now. I am a grandmother age, so I'm like, and it's true, it was much later in life where I finally had the confidence or the burgeoning of confidence to say, you know what, I'm going to do this, I'm just going to do it. And so many people are hitting that point in life and just need a little bit of guidance, a little bit of direction, and that like, hey, listen, I've done it, I can do it. If I can do it, you can do it. And guess what, I have the tools and the resources to help you do it. I mean, geez, what a life changer for people. I think it's so awesome.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for all those kind words. I guess I am a self-made woman. I mean, and I come from an entrepreneurial family, so I had my parents' support and encouragement, and I am not bored. And the funny thing about that is that my mom, when we were kids, she used to say that bored was like a four-letter word. It was like a swear word. I don't want to hear it. And so
Yeah.
if we're bored, and this was in the 70s and 80s when, there's no social media, there's three TV channels and we couldn't always
Right.
watch them and stuff. And she'd say, go find something to do. And for me, it was reading and writing.
Yeah.
If it wasn't, playing in the fields or whatever. And I think that you're never alone if you have these characters and like when I read a great book, I feel like I've gone on vacation, and I love it.
Mhm.
There's so much to explore and discover for sure.
Yes. Oh, that's so true. So true. What's like, do you have like a one go-to thing of advice that you tell your new and aspiring authors? What's that one thing, if there is one? I don't like putting anybody on the spot, so we can cut this if we want. But yeah, do you have like a one specific thing that you go to tell them for encouragement or just
Well,
advice?
yeah, but probably more than once. I don't know if I can ramble a little bit, but definitely, first of all, just write. Like if you want to write,
Yeah.
just write. Don't look for permission. Don't make excuses. Just, write in the carpool line, write, on the backs of napkins or even like, dictate into your phone or whatever, just to get in the habit and exercising that muscle. I have come to believe that you need a regular writing routine. And a lot of people fight me on that. And I used to fight me on that, but I also didn't write that regularly. So I've learned that, it really is a benefit. It becomes a habit. Um, but I also think surrounding yourself with other writers in a writing community of some sort is really important. And that's so easy to do now with all of our digital connections. And,
Mhm.
I have people who come to I do a monthly write along that's free. It's the first Saturday of the month, and anybody can sign up. And I have people from every time zone in the U.S., every side of Canada, Germany, England, Kosovo, India. So I've had people in the middle of the night somewhere just tune in so we could write together. And
Wow.
it's really nourishing to be around other writers, and to see that we're all connected over writing. So I think that's super important.
Yeah, it's so true. Because as we well know, writing is such an isolated experience. Typically, you're on your own, you're in your bubble and writing, but then when you get to know other writers and build that community and become part of a community like that, you realize that all of the things that you're thinking, the imposter syndrome stuff and the, just simple questions and doubts and anything that comes up and or just reassurance, you discover like this whole wealth of all of that and just simple understanding, community. That's the word right there. And I love that you bring all of these people together from all over the place. That's just beyond cool. I love it, love it,
Yeah,
love
it's,
it.
it's amazing. It's really encouraging.
So cool. Now tell me about your podcast.
So the Make Meaning podcast started in 2018, and I really started it as an outgrowth of my marketing company. I wanted to, and also, I used to be a journalist, so I have this insatiable curiosity, and I felt like a podcast made it okay for me to ask nosy questions and things like that. And so I started by interviewing people who had fascinating stories and were driven by meaning and purpose and things like that. And so but it really began because a little bit more of a somber moment. But my dad was diagnosed with a terminal leukemia, and so I started doing the podcast as a way to record his stories and
Mm.
really like he was always my inspiration. And it aired the first episode with him on his 80th birthday, which we didn't know if he would live for, and he did. He also saw his 81st birthday, and so he was on the 1 year anniversary. He was the
Mm.
guest as well. Unfortunately, he died about 7 months later. But it really was started to capture those stories and make sure that inspirational people who had just done incredible things could share their experiences, their wisdom, their advice for people. And it's grown over the years as my marketing business changed. I focused on interviewing people in the different niche audiences that I was working with. And then when I made this pivot more to focus on writing and working with writers, I changed the podcast, and now I focus exclusively on interviewing authors and people in publishing. And boy, I every single day I get a request from someone to be on the podcast, and I try not to say no. But like we're recording now in October, and I have people booked through next July, and I
Mm.
still have people I haven't responded to yet who I would like to get on the schedule. So that's really cool. And yeah, I get to read a lot of cool books now too.
Yes, isn't that awesome? I love that. It's so exciting. I love my growing collection of signed author copies.
Yes.
They're just such treasures, they really are. And I agree completely. It's so cool to hear other people's writing journeys, find the similarities, hear the differences too, and just to give them that opportunity, right? Because there's so many as we know, there are so many authors out there. Some people will say that it's a saturated market, and I don't agree with that whatsoever. I think there can never enough books, never enough writers, never enough stories,
Yeah.
and to that, I also want to say for anybody watching, if you're sitting there, with a book in mind or a book on paper, however, wherever it is in your sphere, and you're thinking to yourself, it's already been told, or somebody's told the story better, because our stories are relatable. We have shared experiences, but nobody has your specific experience. Nobody has your exact story. So it should never be a deterrent to write it, and write it simply because it's in your heart to write it, and it's a passion. I hate, and I know you're the same way. I hate hearing anybody being deterred from writing for whatever the reason is. I can't stand it. So it's we're so fortunate that we get to do what we get to do, give people that platform and that opportunity, right?
100%. Yeah. I just think one of the things that I've come to love about the fiction world that I'm in, at least, is the incredible support. Like, there's no competition amongst my friends who are also authors. We all buy each other's books. We post about each other on publication day. Um, we all believe, we have this abundance mentality that there is enough to go around. Like, we're not in competition with each other. We are here to lift each other up. And unfortunately, that's not the case in so many industries and in so many communities. And I just feel like, what a great place to be. Like, why would I want to be anywhere else? It's so cool to see that writers are just supporting other writers.
Yes, absolutely. And I'll like piggyback on there. Not enough books, not enough podcasts either. So I don't care what anybody says. If there's, oh, everybody's got a podcast. Yeah, well, if you want one, you should have one too. Because
Yeah,
why not?
right.
And why can't we support each other and encourage each other? And it's just, I mean, if you want to take it down to, kind of cliche saying, it's just good karma. It's
For
just good
sure.
karma. There's no reason. There's no reason not to. And as a matter of fact, I just want to make sure I'll be putting all the links for all of your stuff in there, so everybody. So you're not gonna hurt my feelings if you're like, okay, Elsa, I'm tired of you. I'm going over to watch. That's okay. I'm still gonna be around. It's all good.
We can send each other audience members, and
Exactly.
there's enough love
Yeah.
in the world. Yes.
Yeah, and that's so true, because people that's what they're doing when you put out a book. You want to, this is what we do. We go out and we do our little press tour, and these days life is so easy. We get to do it like this, and we don't have to travel if we don't want to. And I
Yes.
mean, it just doesn't get easier than this. It's so cool.
Yeah. It's awesome. It is awesome. Yes.
Yes. Now, I'm gonna kind of like bring it back around town here and
Sure.
go back to your books for a minute. And if we didn't already say it, you are not only a fiction author, you're a nonfiction author and author of poetry as well, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. My
Which
MFA
which,
is, sorry.
sorry.
My MFA
Which
is
one
in
came first?
poetry. It came first.
Poetry did. Okay.
So
Very, very cool.
I have 2 collections of poetry out. I have 6 nonfiction books, and then this novel is the first of what I hope will be many.
Yes, it sounds like it. You said you got one now that's in revisions. Is that right?
Yep.
So cool.
Yes.
Um, Yes. Anything, will Woman of Valor get a sequel? Is it a standalone or undecided? You always get asked that, right?
Yeah, it's funny because like, readers have already said, "I want a sequel. I wanna know what happens next with these characters." And I was like, "Oh, that's super cool. Thank you. That, like, really speaks to me." Um, maybe. I mean, I actually had originally envisioned it as the first of a series of 3 books, but not sequels necessarily, like, a subsequent book that pulled out some of the secondary characters to focus on them. And when I mentioned this to a friend who was an early reader, he's like, "No, no, no, we want more on Sally and Barry." And I was
Ooh.
like, "Okay, well, let me think about that." But right now I'm focused on the next book, which is not a sequel. It's not related to this, but it's a really, really fun story. So I want to get that in the world, and then I'll see what comes after that.
Very exciting. And when that one comes out in the world, I would love for you to come back and tell us about that one and share that with us. I love it. And each one after that too, because I'm excited. There's going to be a whole line of fiction books. And so fun, fun, fun.
Thank you. I will look forward to that, Elsa, and we'll become best friends. We'll talk about all of our books. I love it.
I love it. We're going to have a blast. I love it. Guys, this has been Lynne Golodner. Please go check out her books. All the links are going to be in the show notes. So go check everything out. And if you're an author, go get on the podcast too. You got a little bit of a wait, but that's okay. It'll be well worth it. So
Yeah.
get on over there.
Thank you so
Oh,
much.
Lynn, thank you. Thanks again for being on the show. Guys, take care and we'll see you in the next episode.